How many of you have heard of Alzheimer's? Well, that is a form of dementia. Dementia is just a blanket term. And today's guest, Kathy Chan, is going to speak specifically about Lewy body dementia. Now, she is a caregiver, but she has also experienced this firsthand with her mom. And I can say that I am going through a similar situation right now with one of my parents. So, what is this blanket term of dementia? Well, it robs you of your cognitive function. So, your memory, your ability to think, your ability to remember, to learn a lot of this. So, many of us have either gone through this or are currently going through this with a parent or maybe a friend. So, in this podcast, we're going to learn about some of the signs to look for. Some of the things that Kathy actually missed, but she's going to share that with us so we know what to look for. This may also be helpful for you, for me to understand what it is that I need to look for to help someone, including myself. So please sit back, relax, please subscribe, share, and enjoy this podcast because I believe that this is going to be very beneficial for a lot of people out there. Also, if you're a pet owner, please be responsible and have your pets spayed or neutered. All right, let's get right to the show. We're going to talk about dementia, and you do have a book. You are an author of, is it called Someone to Watch Me Sleep? Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm a caregiver. If you asked me if I was going to be an author 5 years ago, I'd say you're crazy. But I wrote this book because I'm in your situation, or was in your situation, where wrote this book to create awareness about Lewy body dementia, which is the second most common form of dementia, but least known. Dr. Lewy worked with Dr. Alzheimer's back in 1912 and discovered this disease. But it grew bigger, and really what it came down to, and I think this is where you're at, and I missed the signs. So in my book, I talk about missing the signs, but I want to hopefully create some awareness for your audience of looking at it differently that I didn't. Looking at it holistically, memory is often not the leading lady. She's often the last sign in dementia.
Mm-hmm.
Also creating awareness that maybe you're in the spot check of, she has dementia. Why does it really matter what kind? I'm here to advocate that it does matter because you want her to get the best treatment and some to help care for the symptoms, but others, there's actually medication that can help slow it down, also will help you, also will help research. So it started with creating awareness about Lewy body, but it's really about creating awareness of seeing early signs and how to make the best at that first doctor's appointment. I missed that. And I looked at it as just little one-offs. Like I didn't know that frequent UTIs could be potentially a early sign of dementia. That doesn't mean that every UTI every person gets, you're having dementia. But if you looked at it holistically, because these plaques and taus and Lewy bodies tangle up the brain and they
Mm-hmm.
affect other things that are happening. So often if you went to that doctor's office with your mom, I talk about as a caregiver being the dot before the doctor. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying as a caregiver, I wish I said on those first doctor visits, all these things are happening, which are, lack of sleep or mood change or trouble swallowing, and to look at all of the things holistically to get a diagnosis.
We're going to talk about like our parents or others going through this and what we see or what we're looking at or trying to find. But I also want to touch on, do we look at ourselves for some of these signs? Again, because I'm in that situation as well, I start looking going, oh boy, you know, I think I see some of those things. So am I going to be that way? And I like to be able to talk about preparedness just in case. Just in case. How are we going to help ourselves and how are we going to help our caregivers possibly at that point? But to continue with your story, what were those signs that you missed, but what were those signs that you saw?
So I'll answer your latter question first, and then we'll talk about that. Oh, looking at myself.
Mm-hmm.
So first, some of the signs that I missed were, like I said, trouble swallowing. Sleep is a big one. Sleep is one of the earlier ones. Sleep is one of the the best things we can do for our brain, and also one of the early indicators if sleep is not happening, and not just a few missed nights, but if you're having trouble sleeping, and you're not sleeping during the day, if you're not getting that full REM cycle, that can be a problem. Now, who doesn't have sleeping problems? I mean, I have them, and it doesn't mean that everyone that has sleeping issues is starting dementia signs. However, it's one of the first. Mood can also be one, depression. But all of these can get convoluted. My mother had cancer at the time. So all of her things that she had going on, trouble swallowing, frequent UTIs, constipation, these are all very common. But if you put them all together holistically in a picture and you could see like, wow, she has not just a UTI every now and then, it's frequent. And she's having this and she's having those other things. I think sleep and with Lewy body in particular, not all dementias have this, um, hallucinations. And Lewy body is a challenging one because you have really good days and bad days. So cognitive decline, she could be spot on for a week and a half and have 2 bad days. So you go, that's interesting. So it was really those early signs. We just didn't look at holistically. All those things individually got treated, saying, oh, well, the reason why that happened was probably a reaction to the steroids and so we don't do our healthcare providers much service when we just give them the little piece, but we don't even know. I didn't know to look at it holistically. Like before I go to can I look at also the physical symptoms that are happening for myself or mom or dad or my loved one to share? And then you might get a neurological consultation. But when we do the little things, it just, I never occurred to me to think of it holistically, honestly.
You know, you're right about that. And I want to say that goes along with a lot of, or any type of medical condition or situation, because you want to be able to provide the healthcare provider with everything. And I know that people often go, well, why didn't they check for this? Well, sometimes it falls upon us to say, this is what's happening. Oh, by the way, I'm falling down too, and I don't understand why.
Yeah. So going back to it, I think we all are worried about it. It's certainly a disease. Gosh, we're in the silver tsunami. Many of us are aging at this point. 10,000 Americans turn 65 every day. 1 in 4 of us are caregivers. So this is a real topic for many of us. But we're also worried about ourselves. And so to that, I'd like to say that dementia is a real condition and that we're not all going to get it, but some of us might. But what I also want to bring up, which I found by working with some other organizations, is that we treat dementia like you either have it or you're not, like you're pregnant or you're not. Where if I said to you, Chuck, my mom has cancer, what would probably one of the first questions you would ask me?
What kind is my
What
first impression?
and what stage, right?
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yep. Are you 1, 2, 3, or 4? Yes, you're
Yes.
right.
What kind and what stage? So interesting, dementia, we're all like, it doesn't really matter. It's just dementia. It does matter, just like cancer. And like cancer, dementia has stages. There's 1 through 7, right? And so if we as a society can start talking about it when we start seeing some maybe early signs, then not all dementia, we have this fear that it's this end ugly thing. And so I don't feel like in the United States, I haven't researched around the world, but in the United States, I feel like there's some stigma. And often us who are experiencing it, certainly my mom, she wasn't telling me that she was feeling weird. My title of my book is Someone to Watch Me Sleep. And that's our first chapter. And she wanted us to hire someone to watch her sleep. And I kept asking, but for what? And, she was sick. And so I thought, well, maybe someone could resuscitate her or help her if things went south. But really, she was asking for someone to watch her sleep because she was hallucinating and wanted someone to confirm. You see that, right? And we didn't find that out till later. But typically, the folks who have or experiences signs of dementia, they don't want to share because they feel like, you're going to treat me differently. Maybe I'm going to lose my independence. I'm not going to be able to live alone. You're going to take away my license. So those who starting to, your loved one may not share with you because they're afraid, and rightfully so sometimes. Although, again, there's 7 stages, and if we can talk more about that and let folks know, it's better. If I said I had stage 1 cancer, you'd be like, "Oh, got it early. Good for you. Let's talk." Maybe there's some things we can do. The same is true of dementia. Now, there's no cure that
Yeah.
we know, but there are things that do help the symptoms and that slow it down. So it is important to know what stage you're in.
Yeah. Listening to you talk about all this, and I can imagine that one who may think that they have it, it's embarrassing to say, I'm hallucinating or I'm this or whatever it might be. The other thing too, I think, as a person who is possibly going to become the caregiver, anyone really, if your parent says to you, I thought I saw something last night, or whatever it might be, we shouldn't lash out at them. We shouldn't lose our temper. We shouldn't lose our patience, um, because I do know that it's difficult when they get to the point where they're forgetting things and they may repeat it over and over. And it's a bad habit, I think, of us who might be the caregiver, or we're not there yet as a caregiver. We say, "You already said that. Why do you keep repeating yourself?" It does not make that person feel any better. And then they may not tell you anything else or refrain.
There you go. Interesting. So as a caregiver, and I say this is a little bit, so my book is about the last 3 weeks of my mother's life,
Oh,
and its diagnosis was March 13th of 2020. So the start of the pandemic, added wrinkle of that little craziness that went on in the medical field is just so challenging. But the truth is my sister was the caregiver. And because I lived in California, my sister lived in Vermont, and my sister was the primary caregiver. So there's also guilt that I understand that,
yeah.
I was helping, but from afar. I was there at the end and the tough part at the end, but my sister did the lion's share. And gosh, there's not really enough of that support for caregivers. In our, I'm my profession is human resources consultant. And it's interesting throughout this process, I realized, we have all these wellness programs at work, but the gym membership and all these things, right? But we really don't talk about what a lot of us, 1 in 4 Americans are caregivers. And we don't really talk about much support for them. And like you said, it does get draining. It is hard to be asked the same question over and over again. And it's tough. And so, yeah, I can't, that's my other passion is caregivers and supporting them and what we can do because it is a tough job to be a caregiver. Um, it's just challenging. And many of us,
Yeah.
still working too.
I give kudos to my sister, who is the main caregiver of my mom. My mom is still here with us. Um, and we joke and she laughs, but she'll ask the same thing 4 times in 60 seconds. And I don't know if you had the feeling that your mom knew after the first couple times, but then she'd forget again, because that's how my mom was. She'd realize, oh, yeah. And then a few seconds later, it's the same darn question.
So my mom, we had a challenge. The other part of my book is we had a challenging relationship, right? And but still, there's I love my mother and she loved me and we loved each other in the best way we could and the sense of honor and the relationship of a mother-daughter and duty. But, at the end, she didn't recognize me, not most of the time, but she would talk about me to me. Talk about a tough spot to be in. I was like, wow, you're right. What a bitch. Like,
Yell at Kathy. Oh,
oh,
man.
what Kathy? She's something, right? And so, for me, it was, actually, I've never been more present in my life with my mom in the last 3 weeks, because luckily for me, it wasn't so much repeating the questions. She had hallucinations, which I don't know if that's lucky for me. They were wild hallucinations. And I would just go with it because that
Yeah.
was her reality at the time. And it didn't serve me to try to convince her that something else was happening. So, meeting where they are and just being with them and having the experience. It's a lot of redirect, but it's also a lot of like, this is interesting. My mother often had strangers in the corner that were lurking at us. And unfortunately, one of her frequent hallucinations were um, dead infants and children. And so
Oh,
we pick them up and say, like, oh no, this wasn't good. And let's look at it. So that part was sad. But there was some funny and good moments. And just take the good moments when they're there and be present. And, but it's tough to all the caregivers out there. I can't say enough about what
yeah.
it takes.
I agree with you on that. And I think as far as like that hallucination goes, and like you said, you just kind of have to go with it. There's no sense in trying to fix it because you're not going to fix it. You know, it's just a progressive disease. I don't know if that's the correct thing for me to say or call it as a disease, but it is progressive.
You are right.
Um, you might be able to do something to ease it or slow it down. I don't know, but Lewy body is once you got it, you're going. It's I know that I'm curious, and I know that listeners and viewers probably are, but you said this kind of took place in 2020, March timeframe ish. Um, how long, and what would your guesstimation be at that stage that you realized mom was there?
So you're asking how long maybe she had the disease prior to getting the diagnosis?
And well, at that point in March, yeah, where she had a stage 2, 3, and then I. This is bad of me to ask, but how long did she have it before it was the end of her time? Because I know that's one thing that a lot of people are curious about. They might see this in their parents, and they'll go, "How much time do I have?"
Well, it's a really good question. In dementia, there's over 200 subcategories of that. So it's certainly there's many different layers, and even within Lewy body, just like cancer, someone could
Hmm.
have a long bout with breast cancer, or it could be short. With my mom, we missed the signs. That's again the reason why I wrote the book is because I missed the signs. In hindsight, she had it probably 6 or 7 years,
Okay.
and we reasoned away and she hid it well. But at the end, there was a point where she couldn't hide it anymore. That's when, again, it was in March and it was start of the pandemic. We're in the hospital together. She could not hide it, and this still breaks my heart. We at the time she was also getting transfusions. She had leukemia. She had stage 4 cancer. So we made a tough decision of stopping those treatments.
Mm.
And that wasn't easy. Now it wasn't like she was going to live another 4 or 5 years with, beyond that. She really was probably in the 6-month range. But stopping the treatment helped expedite that. And my mom wasn't there anymore. She wasn't, you know, sh we weren't sitting back and having few moments of reminiscing about good times or holding hands or, thinking she wasn't there anymore. And so it was a tough decision. But she, typically in a Lewy body scenario, and again, I'm not a doctor, so if what I've read and my understanding, it could be anywhere from 1 to 10 years. And again, there could be outliers on longer
Yeah.
than that. But it's, for her, we really her hallucinations were just consistent at that point, but it was the stopping of the medication that really helped move that process along, which was, it was awful. It was not a great choice. I feel for everybody during the pandemic that couldn't see their loved ones. We were fortunate. It was right at the cusp. And she died fairly early on into that process. She died on the 20th. So it wasn't long. So we had the opportunity to be with her at the end. But it breaks my heart. And honestly, I swear if it happened even a day later, we just wouldn't have been able to because regulations continue to change. And it was so heartbreaking to think of all those people who weren't there, who couldn't have been there and didn't have that opportunity. It wasn't because I was, it just happened to be the circumstances of where we're at. But boy, it breaks my heart to think if we couldn't have been there and then the folks that were faced with that choice.
Yeah. My apologies for talking about something that's difficult for a conversation, but I just, like you were saying at the beginning, just to let people really be aware of this. And part of the reason I ask about that length and when and all that stuff on the stage, I wanted it to be a subtle hint for people to check themselves if they're finding that they are certain things that are happening. Like I said, with UTI, if that's like, wow, what? you know, I'd be like, seriously? Um, I've heard of other things where your gait on your walk, if you all of a sudden find yourself just doing short little steps like this, that's an early sign of some sort of dementia. And like I said, there's like 200 subcategories of all this kind of stuff. There's so much. It's better to be safe, to let yourself know, or at least, you know, have that peace of mind that, okay, I'm okay still. But if you see it in others, question your mom. Hey, mom or dad, you know, let's go get you checked out. I've noticed that you've been falling. Have you been falling more than usual? And if they say yes, okay.
Mm, exactly. And remember when you go, because I talk about being the dot before the doctor, like when you go, think about like, okay, that's right. This is what's been happening with my loved one. But what else? Oh yeah, they haven't been sleeping right. It's been,
Mm-hmm.
this is also they fell down actually in the last 6 months, probably like 3 or 4 times. Um, they're having trouble swallowing. I keep complaining about, gosh, my mom, she kept saying, I just feel weird. And I'm like, I don't even know where to go with that. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I feel weird too. I feel weird when you said you feel weird. Um, so just like tuning in on not just being, oh, memory loss is the only sign of dementia. It's not true. There's so many other signs, and there's many, as we said, many types of dementia. So it's not your job to figure it out, but it's your job to hopefully give your doctors the best tools they can so they can start, because I don't feel like we did that, right? That's why I'm, talking from the caregiver's position. I'm not, my mom had great doctors. It's not their fault. I don't know if it's my fault either. I'm not blaming myself, and
Yeah.
that's a whole other show. But, um, just that if whatever I could do to help others think of it differently in a holistic way and maybe get that sooner diagnosis or the help that they need, that's, it will help with her loss
Yeah.
for me.
It'll help with both sides, the caregiver and, person that's going through it. I want to remind folks that this conversation is with Kathy Chan, and we're talking about Lewy Body Dementia specifically. And you can find her at kathychanauthor.com. Is that still your main website?
That is.
All right. Yeah, and like you were saying, that there are, 10,000 people a day becoming 65 years or of age.
Yeah.
So we're getting into that point where there's a lot of old folks out there.
So it's over, gosh, I've forgotten the statistics right now, but I mean, so it's over 20 something percent of the population is over age 65 right now, most in our lifetime. And the caregivers, which I was surprised as doing the research, I didn't realize that's over 1.6 million teenagers dealing with aging grandparents. So we think about, oh, that doesn't affect me. I'm young. It's affecting a lot of us. And you likely, so 1 in 4 are caregivers. You look around your workplace, you look around with your friends, somebody's going through it. And what can we do to support them? Not only the individuals who are suffering from dementia, but those that are help supporting them. Because, I mean, so that's 40% of America is in that caregiver range, plus the 20,
Wow.
that's 60%. That's pretty high. It's pretty
Yeah.
high. It's pretty high. It affects us all. And, my also little pitch is if you're an employer, we should really be thinking about having those dialogues, because if you're not having those dialogues and reaching out to your folks, they're looking for maybe other opportunities if you're like, boy, Chuck always leaves on Thursday at 2. What is it? This is banking hours, and you're all upset. Well, maybe Chuck is going to help his mom for her appointment. And if you had a conversation with Chuck and say, hey, what can we do you want to come earlier in that day and we can make something work? You might retain your great employee, Chuck, but otherwise, you're starting to give him the stink eye, and you might lose Chuck because
Yeah, you hear that, you guys?
Right?
But
You can pay me $50 later, Chuck, for that. No, just kidding. But I just, as an employer, I just want us. It's just so pervasive in all that we do, and I just want to do what I can to, honestly, it's just about having the dialogue. And
yeah, uh, I'm glad you mentioned that about employers. It's because in this age, it's not just us. Somebody's I don't want to say controlling, but we are all working. Or most of people are working, but we're also doing, like you said, caregiving. Now, as far as the caregiving goes, I want to ask you because I have a feeling that a lot of people, either at the end or even during and close to it, there's some sort of guilt that the caregiver has. Um, and it may be I'm not doing enough, or I yelled at them, or what. So how is it that the caregiver can help themselves?
boy, I mean, that's a great question, and that's that whole self-care thing. And I tell you what, if you're going to try to help a caregiver, just saying, "I'm here for you. Call me anytime that you need." I'll tell you what, they're also tired. They're also overworked. They're also just trying to figure it out. Being specific and to help a caregiver, hey, could I take your dog to the groomer on Saturday? Would that help? Could I help come over and sit with your mom? And I love to play cards. I know she loves cards too. Can I grab those groceries? Can I, being very specific, because what is hard for caregivers, and won't surprise you, Chuck, that most caregivers are women. And they're usually, I don't know if your sister's the oldest, but usually it's the firstborn daughter who plays that role. So we're not good at asking for help, the caregivers. So yes, caregivers should give their self-care and they need to give themselves a break and all of that, but they are the worst at asking for that. Right? They're the worst. So to help out and to support, don't just say, "Hey, I'm here for you, whatever you need." It's like, "Hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm coming over. I'm going to take your mom or dad out, or I'm going to sit here. You run errands." Even just giving them the ability to go. I mean, great to get a massage, great, but we're talking sometimes fundamental, like, I just need a break. And if I could just go and take a nap, that would be awesome. So try to be as specific as you can to help out those folks
I
because
like that tip
they're
being,
terrible at asking.
yeah, yeah. Well, I like that tip about being specific because I think a lot of us have that guilt of, hey, if you need something, let me know. And then, especially, I'm going to be stereotypical, but not chauvinistic. Women tend to do and be the caregiver, and that I'll fix it. And you know, they're putting on a lot more responsibility on themselves, feeling that the woman needs to do this. So I think being specific is a very, very good thing. Yeah, because if somebody said to me, well, I should say this for my sister then. I'll say to my sister, "Hey, I'm going to take mom this weekend. You go do something." Instead of, "Do you want me to?"
Right, exactly. I mean, they're not good they're not good askers, right? And they don't even know. Honestly, when you are burnt out and you're juggling so many things, it almost feels like another task to figure out how you can help me, right? Like,
Mm,
oh, I don't even know. I don't even know. I mean, they're exhausted. And not
yeah.
always, right? There's some lovely, great moments, but there's also it's challenging. But we have to be really mindful and to say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm making dinner on Tuesday." Or, I don't know, depending on the situation, like, or I'm coming over and I'm just gonna sit and be. I'm gonna walk the dogs, whatever it is, or I'm gonna pick up your kids, because often that's you're in that sandwich generation,
Yeah.
where caring for young ones and parents. So being specific and, letting them know is a best way to support a caregiver, 'cause, honestly, just sometimes it can be a little frustrating. It's like, "You should do self-care," and it's like, "I don't even have time to go to the post office." This
Yeah.
self-care notion sounds great, but, yeah, how does that
I don't have time.
I don't have time. So helping them with that is best, I think.
I'm going to go back to saying I like what you say about being specific. Go take a break. I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to watch. They might say no, that's okay. But I think there's one thing that 99% of the people will not refuse. I'm going to pick up some lunch. I'm going to bring it over.
Food.
It's food. Yeah.
right?
And then you can, because I'm thinking that a lot of times caregivers are with the person that they're giving care for. They need other communication with somebody else too, just to get some release, whatever it might be. Or it could just be that silent meal, or again, just dropping off meal. But I don't know anybody that would say no to food.
Right? We all have to
Yeah.
eat. We all have to eat. Good one, right? I think that's a good starting place. And I would also argue is time. They just don't have enough time. And not even if they go do something, but not just to not have to do something or run around might be great. And saying, I'm gonna come over and I'll sit. I can play
Yeah.
whatever it is, whatever the situation is, even if it's just sitting. So there's someone present, I think would be helpful for
I-
others because it is challenging and you love them. But like with my mom at the end, it wasn't just mom anymore. Mom had changed, she had, and I love her, always will love her. But it was challenging because she wasn't the mom that raised me.
Yeah.
Mm. The
Can
disease
I
changed her.
can I ask you about guilt? We kind of talked about that a little bit. Was there any feeling of guilt from you or any one of your siblings as far as I didn't do enough, or maybe you guilted one sibling, guilted the other?
Okay, so good question. And yes, I have a tremendous amount of guilt, hence the need to feel to write the book because I feel like I didn't do enough while
Hmm.
she was alive. And I have tremendous guilt about that. My sister was the primary caregiver. She did a lot of the work. All these things I'm talking about, I didn't do as much as I could have. That's what for sure. My mom and I had a tough relationship. I didn't learn until really the end of like, still it matters to show up and the true definition of unconditional love um, is to me and with your family. And I was there, so I had tremendous guilt of living far away, and I just had to hear about it. And I'd be like, "Oof, tough conversation." But then I'd go off and do my own life and live. I wasn't dealing with that, so I have tremendous guilt. I have friends that often there'll be one sibling that stays behind, and there's guilt about you're not doing your share. My sister did not guilt me at all. She was amazing and tremendous, and I have nothing. That's why I do feel guilty. I am a caregiver, and I was in the last 3 weeks of her life, and we had a fight during the pandemic. Was fight to get in and out, and the hospitals and her medication. It was just a crazy time in general. And I did that part at the end, and that my sister was exhausted, and she just couldn't make that happen. But yeah, I have guilt about that. I did, you know, people would say, "Oh, writing the book was cathartic," and I was like, "No, I'm doing it to create awareness, and I'm a champion." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, they were right. It was cathartic because I did feel right." Like, no, I'm just doing this to create awareness, but it did help. I think talking to others and sharing. Yeah, we all do the best we can.
Yeah.
Um, but continuing to do that. So in the time I wasn't capable, but now I am capable of creating awareness and yeah, and I'm gonna do the best I can. Right.
Well, thank you for doing this because cathartic or not, I think eventually it ends up helping everyone, yourself and others. And, you know, this might be wrong, but to me, it almost doesn't matter, even if it's just for the moment that you did it. But if you complete it and if it's going to help somebody else, that's great. If you continue your, I'll call it a legacy of helping, um, more power to you. But we also, and people are going to hate me for saying this, but we also have our own lives to live after something. You can't. Again, I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, doctor, or anything, but I'm just going by how I feel. We can't live our lives for somebody else and then lose ourselves in that for one reason or another. So don't guilt yourself into feeling bad or doing something is what I would say, and just be the best person you can, love yourself, and help others.
So Exactly. I wrote the book to create awareness. I did the signs. There's 2 or 3 signs at the end of the book, of end of each chapter. But you're right. I'm not. I'm trying to use this my energy not to feel guilt. That doesn't do me a whole lot, but to just create and have the dialogues and hopefully help other people. I mean, it's hard to get there, but I wrote the book to create awareness, and so that's the journey now. That's um I'm in HR, I've done a lot of training, I've done a lot of public speaking. So really, I wrote the book so I could speak. So that's where I'm at right now. And yeah, I feel fortunate I found my passion. Everyone's like, what's your purpose in life? Kind of feel like I found it now. So I find that there's some solace and beauty and it fills me. Also, maybe guilt got me there, but um, I hope that I help others and that this is a service and I can't miss even if I just help one.
Yeah. And I can guarantee that you are and have already done that just by writing the book and being on shows and making people aware, because at least one person out there is going to go, okay, I know how I feel now, and it's okay to feel this way. Oh, I know some of those signs to look for because Kathy was talking about it. So I say thank you again on that. Um, can you, before we close out, can you remind us again maybe of a couple of signs that you missed that later on is like, oh shoot, I should have been more aware, or I should have actually, paid more attention.
So I would say with Lewy body in particular, and not all Lewy bodies have hallucinations, but hallucinations, um, we would rack it up to, oh, she hasn't been sleeping well. And we would also go back to sleep. Her sleep patterns were really bad. She was not sleeping at night. And then during the day, having little small cat naps. And I was like, oh, mom, you're just napping during the day. Of course you can't sleep at night. But she wasn't getting that REM sleep. Um, I would say also, her mood. She had some I mean, listen, my mom could be a little bit of a tough cookie. She was a flinty New England woman, but she had some real mood swings that were way out the norm, and we were just like, oh, she's getting older. She also kept saying things like, now in hindsight, I'm not crazy. And that would be like, during this conversation, Chuck, you probably would have said it to me 4 times. And I'd be like, I never said you were crazy. So she was trying to tell me things that I wasn't listening for. And yeah, so sleep and then gait, she was falling a lot. And so these are the more common ones. And also, um, yeah, I think the trouble swallowing. And she kept saying, I feel weird. I feel weird. And it's like, what does that mean? And really we weren't digging enough because we thought it was about cancer and her chemo treatment. So it was complicated. But by the way, so is what's going to happen to your audience. Life is not black and white and straightforward, right? So just keep asking the questions and looking for, I would say, yeah, sleep, moods, like being paranoid or mood swings that are outside the norm, um, depression, saying like, I feel weird. And again, memory, right? She would have some memory issue stuff. That's the more obvious. But yeah, the trouble swallowing and like I said, frequent UTIs. Again, I don't want anyone to think that, oh, I have a frequent UTI and started early dementia. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to make the connection that these plaques and taus and these tangles and these Lewy bodies can clump up and affect bodily functions. So and not all the time, right? Because they're fogging and clogging. They're not like completely a block. So just thinking of it that way, just even having that awareness, I didn't even occur to me.
All good points. Yeah, it's don't be a hypochondriac and think just because of one thing it's that end, but take a look for everything. So, but be aware. Again, I think you've opened up the doors, Pandora's box, so to speak, to really dive into this and to find out more for me and I probably millions of others out there.
Yeah.
So
All
again,
right. Well,
thank
thank you.
yeah, thank you. And just a last reminder for folks, kathychanauthor.com is the website, and the book is called Someone to Watch Me Sleep. Correct?
Correct. You got it.
We did it.
We did it.
Well,
Awesome.
Kathy, thank you very much for being here today and letting us all know your experiences, what you went through, and giving us some insight and clues into what to look for dementia and specifically Lewy body dementia.
Thank you. And I hope everyone maybe sees things a little differently.